It is Friday, the 16th of October 2020, and I'm in the middle of narrating my website, basically titled The Pedigree of the Phoenix. And it's about how total solar eclipses, in my carefully researched opinion, essentially are responsible for the inspiration of this phoenix myth and a whole bunch of other mythical birds. Essentially, what it comes down to is that there's a bird-like pattern that's perceivable in the sun's corona during some total solar eclipses. And when I first saw this bird-like pattern in a photo of the July 11th, 1991 total solar eclipse, which was published in the May 1992 issue of National Geographic, I saw the bird-like pattern, not immediately, because the photo was not correctly oriented on the page. The wings of the phoenix were in the gutter of the page. It was only a few weeks after receiving the National Geographic when I saw it from a 90-degree angle from what you normally would be looking at, that I saw the bird-like pattern and immediately intuited that this was almost certainly the inspiration for the Phoenix myth, and subsequent research has borne that out and found a whole bunch of other mythical birds and bird gods that were inspired by this phenomena, or almost certainly were. Some things are like pretty darn close to certain. Others it's harder to prove, but there's more than enough evidence to make this a reasonable hypothesis at minimum, and I think it's very, very solid in many areas. So we're in the middle of reading it, and we had to end a video clip. My camera will only record 20 minutes at a time. So we'll start again, and this is about Persian winged sun symbols. At Persepolis in Iran, the Persian god Ahura Mazda, the Zoroastrian religion's supreme god, whose name means Lord of Wisdom, is repeatedly depicted on stone reliefs as a human figure standing within the ring with wings symbol in a manner that is virtually identical to earlier depictions of the Assyrian supreme god deity Ashur. A silver plaque from Luristan, dating from the 7th or 8th century BCE, depicts a central winged anthropomorphic being which is commonly interpreted as the Persian god Zurvan, and which seems to synthesize the characteristics of the winged solar disk with those that are usually attributed to angels. To the right of the primordial god Zurvan is a small cross-like rosette, which is almost certainly a form of the solar cross which was inspired by the total eclipse of the sun. All of these figures, which can be shown to have been inspired by the total solar eclipse, may consider to be prototypical angels. As an aside, I will mention that the Hindu god Shiva is often depicted in the Nataraj cosmic creation dance pose, with his long locks of hair spread out on either side of his radiant face and wearing a tiara of feathers, which distinctly resembles the tail of a bird. I respectfully suggest that this ancient religious icon may well have been inspired by the total solar eclipse and is thus a variant of the winged sun disk symbol. The fact that the third eye, which is depicted on Shiva's forehead, is sometimes depicted with wings would tend to support this hypothesis, since the winged eye symbol of ancient Egypt and elsewhere is simply a variant of the winged sun disk symbol. There is little doubt in my mind that the ancient Hindu sages were as intimately conscious of the symbolism perceivable in the total solar eclipse as their Egyptian and Mesopotamian counterparts were. And I will say that the winged eye symbol, there's really little reason to believe that it's anything other than inspired by total solar eclipses. As mentioned in previous video clips, the French astronomer, illustrator Etienne Leopold Trouvelot drew the 1878 total solar eclipse, and in doing so he basically had thick wings on either side of the sun, and above and below the sun he depicted the sun's polar streamers. It is the corona, but more specifically the polar streamers are sort of fanned out It's like a magnet. The sun is a magnet, so you can imagine a magnet with iron filings and how that fans out, and you see the magnetic structure. Well, that's essentially what it comes down to, is the magnetic structure of the sun is revealed in the sun's corona, in the polar streamers. And it does look very much like the tail of a bird, but if you bring that all the way around the sun, or a good chunk around the sun, it looks like the pupil and iris of an eye. And when the sun's corona is more evenly distributed around the moon, the black moon, it looks very much like a pupil and iris of an eye staring down from the sky. In fact, modern eclipse observers refer to the total solar eclipse as the eye of God, or they remark upon it being, looking like an eye of God, and so on. So I just wanted to add that. In his chapter devoted to the winged globe, the caduceus and the trisula, Comte d'Alviela writes, "In Egypt itself, the sun appeared from remote ages as the essential manifestation, the face, the eye of the one and only God. While one does not have to be overly imaginative to perceive the resemblance of the sun's corona to a gigantic cosmic bird, it is essentially true that the overall appearance of the totally eclipsed sun bears a distinct resemblance to a radiant divine eye. The priests and rulers of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia were perfectly cognizant of this profound symbolism in the total solar eclipse, and both of these ancient cultures had a variant of the winged sun disk symbol which incorporated this eye symbolism. The Egyptians often depicted their ubiquitous Ujet eye symbol with wings in a manner which was virtually identical to their winged sun disk symbol. The Ujet eye may be seen hovering over pharaohs and gods in this form. The Ujet eye symbol represented celestial eyes of the Egyptian gods and goddesses, with the right Ujet eye representing the sun and the left Ujet eye representing the moon. The ancient Egyptians tended to depict their winged solar disk and their winged eye symbols separately, even though they were intimately related with each other and inspired by the same celestial phenomena. But the Mesopotamians often depicted the central part of their wing with ring symbol in a manner which suggested an eye." So here we have the photograph that Serge Kouchmi took of the 1991 total solar eclipse, overlaid an Egyptian Ujet eye symbol. So I think you can see how you have the bird pattern surrounding the dark circle of the moon. You can see how, when the corona is evenly distributed around the sun, it looks like an eye. I mean, even this looks like an eye. When I first saw this photo, first thing I thought is it looked like an eye, weeks before I saw the bird pattern. But it actually looks more like an eye when the coronal streamers are more evenly distributed around the sun, which is most solar eclipses actually. The bird pattern's comparatively rare. So again, we see Serge Kouchmi's photo of the July 11th, 1991 total solar eclipse. This photo was published in the May 1992 issue of National Geographic. You can go see it if you have a copy. And here we have an Egyptian winged eye symbol, Ujet eye symbol. You see the eye, essentially the eye of Horus. You see the leg of Horus below the eye. You see the wing coming out behind there. You see another eye down at the bottom. You see a Uraeus serpent. So you can see the elements, the wings, the solar falcon god Horus, and the eye, all essentially combined there in this symbol. And then to the left, it's a photo I took of a part of a coffin where you have a very simple winged eye symbol. So it's basically the Ujet eye with wings. And again, you can see how that symbol can easily have been inspired by what we see on the right there, the eye-like appearance of the totally eclipsed sun, but also the bird-like appearance of the totally eclipsed sun synthesized together in one symbol. So, in Ancient Pagan and Modern Christian Symbolism by Thomas Inman, a line drawing based on a Mesopotamian rendering of the winged sun disk symbol depicts the disk of the sun as a lozenge-shaped eye with a pupil. The accompanying text reads, "This figure represents Assyrian priests offering in the presence of what is supposed to be Baal, or the representation of the sun god, and of the grove. The first is typified by the eye with wings and a tail, which makes it symbolic of the male triad and female unit. The eye with the central pupil is in itself emblematic of the same. Arranged about the figures are the sun, a bird, perhaps a sacred dove. I do not know what the original source of this line drawing is, but I will accept it for the time being as a reasonably accurate facsimile. Other Mesopotamian depictions of the winged sun symbol, particularly those that were rendered on cylinder seals, do represent the sun disk as an ellipsoid or lozenge rather than a circle. Some versions are even more eye-like, or eclipse-like for that matter, in that the sun disk sprouts rays rather than wings and is enclosed in a larger surrounding ellipsoid. Thomas Inman was obviously aware of this particular example of the winged sun disk symbol representing the Assyrian sun god, and he quite evidently perceived that it also represented the sun disk as an eye. Thus it was essentially a winged eye variant of the winged sun disk symbol. He identifies the bird depicted at the far left side of the scene under the 8-pointed star as the sacred dove, and it does indeed most closely resemble a dove or pigeon as it is depicted. All three of these elements, sun, eye, and dove, are quite evident in Serge Kouchmy's outstanding photograph of the total solar eclipse of June 11th, 1991. Oops, I think it's actually July 11th. I'll have to double check. So a few little errors there. When I first noticed the bird-like figure in the photograph, sometime after perceiving its similarity to an eye in the sky, I made a color photocopy of this image, and using color pencils, I drew a bird over the image. The bird that I chose to draw was in fact a dove. So yes, when I noticed the bird-like pattern, I did accentuate it by drawing a dove. Unfortunately, that image is not available. Neither is the Thomas Inman image. They weren't preserved by the Wayback Machine. You'll just have to accept my verbal description for the time being. Can there be any reasonable doubt that the ancient Assyrian priests and royalty were perfectly cognizant of the similarity of the total eclipsed sun to a radiant divine eye looking down from the sky? I think we can safely conclude that they might well have understood the total solar eclipse to be a form of celestial allegory that signified the omniscience of their supreme deity. Other cultures besides the Egyptians and Mesopotamians may be readily shown to have developed religious iconography which very closely resembles, or I should say parallels, the winged disc or ring with wing symbol. It occurred to me that if the bird-like appearance of the total solar eclipse was in fact the inspiration for solar birds such as the phoenix and the winged solar disk symbol of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, that similar religious concepts and iconography should be found in other cultures that had worshipped the sun. I began looking through books of Mayan, Aztec, and ancient Peruvian art in the hope of finding American versions of the winged sun disk symbols. Amongst the very first examples of pre-Columbian religious art that I came across, which I had good reason to believe were most probably American Aboriginal versions of the winged sun symbol, was a magnificently carved sapodilla wood lintel that was removed from the Mayan ceremonial center of Tikal, along with several others, by the Swiss traveler Gustav Bernoulli in 1877. The lintel is apparently now housed in the Museum für Völkerkunde, Museum of Ethnography in Basel, Switzerland. This intricately detailed wood carving, which is believed to date from about the middle of the 8th century AD, was taken from the sanctuary of the Temple 4 at Tikal, Guatemala. It depicts a serpent bird, variant of the winged sun symbol, with widely outstretched wings hovering over a Mayan ruler or priest who is standing in an arch formed by a great feathered serpent. I had very good reason to believe that this so-called serpent bird was nothing less than a Mayan version of the winged sun symbol, which was inspired by the total eclipse of the sun, particularly since it was so closely associated with the Mayan feathered serpent symbol, which can also be shown to be eclipse inspired. Unfortunately, that image is not there. It wasn't saved. A depiction of this lintel in Medieval Art of the Americas informs the reader that this relief is not only the largest extant wood carving of the Maya, but it embodies the essence of their greatest period in art. The serpent bird at the top center, which also appears at Palenque, Piedras Negras, and Copan, should be mentioned. From this statement, it would appear that the use of the serpent bird symbol was actually quite widespread. The placement of the Mayan serpent bird symbol on a lintel hauntingly echoed the winged sun symbols gracing the lintels over the entrance to the temple dedicated to Horus at Edfu, and the fact that this serpent bird is depicted hovering over a Mayan priest or ruler similarly echoes the ubiquitous depiction of the winged sun symbol hovering over priests and rulers in ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian iconography as well. Let's see how we're doing for time. Okay, we got about 4 some odd minutes left. Continue down here. A remarkable phenomena that I have experienced on several occasions is that within a short time of having an intuitive insight or profound gut feeling regarding some aspect of my researches, the material that helps to confirm or corroborate it falls into my hands very soon afterwards. I had remembered that Comte d'Alviela had devoted a chapter to the winged disc symbol in his seminal work, The Migration of Symbols, and I punched the title into the library computer at McGill University so I could continue my research on this subject, or into this subject. When I did so, 2 books appeared on the computer screen, both having the title Migration of Symbols. The other book was by an author whose name I had not previously come across, a certain Donald Mackenzie. I decided to look through Mackenzie's book as well, and when I looked up winged disc in the index, it referred me to page 9 of his book. Mackenzie had very little to say about the winged disc symbol. However, page 9 consisted of a series of illustrations of various forms of the winged disc with the familiar Egyptian, Assyrian, Syro-Hittite, and Babylonian forms dominating the page. Below these was what Mackenzie considered to be a Polynesian form of the winged disc, an assessment that I must agree with. And the last illustration at the bottom of the page, which was identified by Mackenzie as a pre-Columbian Mexican form of the winged sun disc symbol, was a line drawing of the serpent bird motif from the carved wooden lintel that had previously graced Temple 4 at the Mayan ceremonial center of Tikal. It was the very one that I had intuitively recognized as almost certainly being an ancient Mayan version of the winged sun disc symbol only a few days earlier. So essentially, these things do happen. Unusual coincidences. And this is one of them. I've had a fair number. But it's just interesting how, when you're researching something and the information you want just falls into your hands almost accidentally. I've even been looking for things and found books lying on tabletops in libraries which are the exact book I needed to. So somebody else had been looking at the book, had left it there, and that was the exact book I needed to continue my research. So here we actually have the illustration. So this is the Egyptian winged sun. This is a very simplified Tau cross-shaped Mesopotamian one. This is winged sun with a rosette in the middle over a caduceus from look of things. This is a Mesopotamian Hittite winged sun with a rosette again for the sun. This is the Polynesian one, and this is the serpent bird I was talking about, albeit a line drawing of it. Unfortunately, the illustrations are so small I can't really go into much more detail. At the time when I put these websites up, it was the late 90s, I couldn't put massive images up. I had to keep fairly small sized images. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're just about done, so I think we have to wrap it up. We'll start again soon, but that's not a bad note to end on. The unusual coincidences that I have experienced while researching, and I will add that all of this began before the research, a series of extremely unusual coincidences, what Carl Jung called synchronicity.